Today's session is all about the CFO's AI dilemma, the pressure to innovate, but the liability for getting it wrong. My name is James Kearns. I am the head of international markets at a company called Kefron. For those of you who don't know us, Kefron specialize in accounts payable and purchase to pay automation solutions. And at the heart of those solutions is our AI engine that supports organizations trying to scale their business, but trying to scale it effectively using AI. I'm really pleased to say that we are joined by a special guest. And Cindy, I'll let you introduce yourself and a little bit about ORSM, if that's okay.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, James. I'm very happy to join Kefron and to provide insights on what RSM is doing in the AI world and emphasize that AI is here to stay so that everybody needs to get on board. I'm a director here in RSM and I reside in the Chicago area. So happy to dive in and start talking about the CFO and AI.
Lovely. Thank you for joining, Cindy. I guess what I wanted to do today was talk a little bit about I guess the mantra we have as an organization. And when our CTO joined the business, her view was, look, what we need to do as an organization to scale quickly, both with our product, but also as an organization as a whole. So that includes our back office finance team, our operations team, our software development team, is we need to work smarter and faster, not harder. And I guess, look, to do that, personally, ChatGPT as an example is something that I use on a daily basis. And ultimately, the reason for using that is, I guess, to try and deal with what I call blank page syndrome, right? So blank page syndrome for me is, something that is when I sit down to try and get started on something, whether it's a proposal for a client or a challenge that I'm trying to solve, staring at a blank page is really difficult for me to get started. So it's probably no surprise in preparation for today's conversation with Cindy, I use ChatGPT to get started, right? So really simple prompt. I have a presentation to a group of US finance leaders about AI and its evolving role and impact on finance processes. Give me some talking points to keep the presentation informative, engaging, and not too salesy. So Nicole in the background there keeps telling me, make sure you don't make it too salesy, given my commercial nature. And ultimately, what did that do? It gave me some key talking points, right? And some of this is what you'll hear today throughout today's conversation. Now, ultimately, hopefully you can realize that both Cindy and I are not chatbots, but I am starting to use it to support my process for getting started on tasks. And I think that's really important for finance leaders, whether you're interested in investing in AI or you wanted to start small, is start looking at some of the tools that are readily available for you today to actually get started on your AI journey. So as an example, I've given you a kind of crude example today for my own use case for using ChatGPT. But when I look at our finance team started using GPT and Copilot, obviously for meeting notes and things like that, but also for things like supplier vetting, right? So to try and get some background information on new suppliers that they may be onboarding, for doing standard operating procedures for supplier onboarding. All of those kind of things are really strong use cases that you can get started with today to start, I guess, alleviating some of the stress and noise that comes alongside AI. I'm going to stick on ChatGPT for a second, and the reason I'm doing that, we're not a ChatGPT partner or a sales agent or anything like that. But obviously, GPT was one of the reasons that AI became mainstream, right? It was in our hands day to day. It's on most of our applications, and we do use the OpenAI extraction models for our own solution, right? To extract invoice data from supplier invoices and make it as easy as possible for users to automate the accounts payable and purchase to pay process. I think what's really kind of startling here is obviously the advancement of AI, right? So we can see ChatGPT was the fastest application to reach 1 million users, right? You can see Threads over here on the left-hand side. Threads, though, took Instagram's users, so we're still saying ChatGPT is the fastest. 800 million active weekly users as of January 2026. And over 3 billion unique visits in January. And just in comparison, when you look at Amazon, they're at 2.4, right? So if you think about that from a usability and advancement perspective. what probably should take up, I guess, a little bit more screen space is this element down here. And I find this really interesting for a number of reasons. Well, most of particularly if you're in the United States, the bar exam is obviously for a lawyer or solicitor to become qualified. And what I found really interesting was in 2022, GPT took the bar exam and failed. In 2023, it passed, but it was in the bottom 10%. And then in 2024, it passed, but it was in the top 10%. And the reason I find that interesting is because it's kind of similar to our own AI journey in Kefron. So as I said, we use the open AI models to extract incoming invoices and extract the data. So everything from your invoice numbers to your PO numbers and the line item detail. And that extraction engine is extremely accurate today. But when I think back to 2022 and 2023, when we first started on our AI journey and embedding it in our product, unfortunately, the extraction accuracy rates, so how accurate the AI engine was at extracting information off the page, was pretty low, right? It was in 50, 60 percentile range. And now as we enter into 2026, we're into 95, 98, 99%, right across all of the documents that we process on behalf of our customers. So I thought that was kind of an interesting use case to align the two. Cindy, you in particular, in terms of AI apps, are you a GPT user, a Copilot, anything?
Copilot, because RSM has deployed that for us. So
Excellent.
probably Copilot for work, but Chat GPT for pleasure, I guess.
Very good. Recipes at home and that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
Good. All right. So what I'm going to move on to next is, look, it's probably no surprise this, but I wanted to, I guess, get into some of the detail and maybe give some insights um, on this in particular if you're a finance leader who's ultimately potentially coming under some pressure to invest in AI or an AI project. So global spending by the end of 2026 is due to reach $301 billion, right? So, and that's on a global scale. I think what I would say is if you're a finance leader thinking about these types of projects, it's important to take maybe a cautious view of some of this. And the reason I say that is because from a software vendor perspective, so when I think about us as a business, this type of research, we should be popping bottles of champagne maybe, right? Because it means there's appetite for our solution and our tool in the market. But what I would say is, unfortunately, this type of information has led to software vendors right across the globe in every single vertical or industry or use case you can think of claiming to use AI in their products, right? So competitors of ours immediately overnight, it felt like changed their name, so their company name or their product name to incorporate AI in some respect. And you can probably see that in some of the literature that you're seeing, whether it's an ERP system and it's AI native, or it's your CRM system who are adding new AI driven tools. I think what's really important though, as you go through this kind of AI journey, is to start to try and, I guess, challenge software vendors a little bit. And look under the hood, because in some instances, depending on their, I guess, scale and investment, actually using AI within their product, whether it's AI or it's something else, can be misleading. And I'll give you an example. As a business, we invested pre-Copilot actually in call coaching and call recording software, which was pretty big a couple of years ago. And ultimately, what that meant was a bot would join all of our sales calls, our implementation calls, our product calls. It would record it, it would transcribe it, and then it would send the meeting notes to all of the attendees, which is very, very commonplace today if you're using a tool like Copilot. When we went through that buying process, we spoke to 3 vendors, which you would typically do in a natural procurement process, went through 2 or 3 demonstrations with each, and then when we got to the kind of, I guess, the business end of the decision making process to make a commitment to a vendor, one thing that we wanted to do was give them a call recording that we had and ask them to live transcribe it on the call, right? Because all of the feedback and communication we had gotten from them is our AI is better than this AI for X, Y, and Z reason. And in every instance, all 3 vendors gave us major pushback against that, right? So they didn't want to do a live demonstration without data that they had prepared to show us that information. And that was obviously a red flag, right? So I think what I would take from that and what I'm trying to get across is if you're thinking about these types of projects, it's really important that you do put some of these vendors under pressure, because ultimately, as global spending increases, so does the pressure to get it right. And the final thing I would just say is right now, 80% of AI projects fail to reach meaningful business outcomes or are scrapped before value is realized, right? So it's roughly double the failure rate of traditional IT projects. So getting this right and your due diligence in that pre-sales process and engagement with different vendors is really, really important. Okay, so I'll come back to that towards the end of today's session. Final thing I just want to finish off on before I hand over to Cindy to give us a bit of an insight into the AI and the age of the ERP in particular is the Kano model. Okay, so some of you will be familiar with this, and maybe some of you won't be. This is something that's extremely important to us as a software development company. And I think it's probably, if you think about, if you've ever met a guy or a girl like me in a sales engagement process and you've asked them, you really want a feature, and you've asked them about that feature time and time again, and the response back is, oh yeah, it's on our product roadmap, right? I assume that some of you have had that kind of experience. The Kano model is used by software development companies to prioritize product features. So when I meet with our product team, really what we're trying to do is look at the specific features that customers are requesting, and we're trying to categorize it. And that categorization helps us prioritize those features. So if you are speaking to a software vendor and you're thinking about an investment in AI and you really want a feature that you've seen in one product, but you want to go with another provider and you want to understand, are they thinking about that feature? Hopefully this will give you some insights in maybe how to do that and navigate that landscape with the software vendor. I always like to use a hotel analogy to explain this. So a performance feature, okay, when we're putting it through the Kano model, is ultimately something that the better you do it, the more the users love it. Okay, so in a hotel analogy, that would be, let's say, the size of the room, right? So the size of the room in the hotel that you check into, the bigger it is, usually the happier you're going to be. In our world, in our product, a performance feature is the speed of the system, right? So how fast the speed of the system loads, or how accurate the AI is at picking up information on the page, right? Because it links to a business case of reducing your data entry. A table stakes feature for any poker players on today's call is a feature where ultimately users expect it, right? And if it's wrong, it's irritating. Okay, so in a hotel analogy, a table stakes feature is how clean the sheets are in the hotel, right? Obviously, if you check into the room, the hotel sheets aren't that clean, you're probably back down to the concierge or the front desk to complain. A table stakes feature in software or product development is like single sign-on, right? It's something that you would just expect a product today to have to make your data and your access as secure as possible. A delighter feature is something that, even if it's not perfect, users are still really, really happy to see it in the platform. It delights them. In a hotel analogy, a delighter would be maybe a concierge service at the front desk, or champagne on arrival, or a view of Central Park, as an example. A delighter feature in our world today in particular is all around generative AI and AI prompting. Okay, so one of the features that we're releasing in our product is an AI prompting report builder. Okay, so when you log into the system, instead of downloading a CSV report, you'll go into the AI prompt in the reporting center and you'll tell the system to build the report by just communicating just like you would with Copilot or GPT, and then it's going to come back with that report, right? So for example, show me all invoices that are overdue over the next 30 days or over the previous 30 days. So that's really, and sorry, the final one is indifferent, right? So users don't really care about it. So for example, hotel analogy, the boiler in the basement, or in the product, the URL that you use to log into the platform. So look, those elements hopefully are useful, particularly if you're thinking about an AI journey or you're thinking about introducing new software. You're dealing with a vendor, they're talking about their product roadmap, you really want a feature. Just try and ask them to explain, is it that a delighter feature? Do you see it as a performance feature? Is it a table stakes? Because ultimately, If they see AI prompting as a performance feature or a table stakes, it's something that's on their product roadmap as a priority, right? And that's really, really important. Okay, so some key takeaways, Cindy, before I stop talking finally and hand over to you is work smarter and faster, right? But start small. So that's back to some of the tools that are readily available to you today. So whether it's a co-pilot program that you want to introduce across the organization or it's a GPT program, start with the tools that are available that are low cost and easy to use. To avoid failure, try and document your processes end to end and to understand opportunities for AI and automation, right? So again, that's really back to this stuff we were talking about with global spending, right? Try and document some of those processes. So ultimately, when you do get to the stage that you can introduce this type of tool, you're really, really clear about where the use case is to avoid that failure rate. And then finally, and hopefully this is refreshing to hear from a software vendor, try and challenge what you're being told, right? Push the vendor to look under the hood. Give them your invoices, give them your purchase orders, tell them to do a live demonstration of your data. And if it is really AI, the AI should be able to pick it up. Not 100% perfectly, but ultimately that should give you an indication of where that vendor is on their AI journey themselves. Cindy, hopefully that made sense and gave us some good insights into cutting through some of the noise. I'm really interested to hear what's going on with RSM and finance leadership in the age of the European AI.
Yeah, thank you, James. That was very insightful. I do like that model. It's very interesting, and the concept of challenging these vendors, because we know a salesperson will tell you what you want to hear, but I think you need to look, beneath the hood and challenge them.
Agreed.
So if you can go to the next slide.
Yeah.
So AI and the new demands of finance leaders. Finance is no longer just about reporting. It's about being able to make strategic decisions at a very fast speed. In order to do that, you do need a sophisticated tech stack. AI is also reshaping industries. It's reshaping how we work. But if your organization doesn't have a clear growth strategy in place, tech investments can become a very expensive experiment. So the questions you're asking should not be what tech do we need, but rather what outcomes are we driving towards? Are you driving towards expansion, increased revenue, cost reductions? What does your organization's 5 year plan look like? What does the 10-year plan look like? So some things you need to think about are the systems of record to the platforms for growth. So some of the common challenges that a lot of organizations face are disconnected systems, manual processes, limited visibility across the organizations. Many finance teams still operate in silos of responsibilities of day to day work. Someone might be responsible for accounts payable, which is often manual. Another person was responsible for monthly reporting duties. The silos lead to fragmented data across the organization and the inability to understand where one's person interaction with the data ends and another begins. So this hinders the organization and leads to reactive reporting. So within the new pillars of modern finance tech, uh, it's always usually a cloud ERP, some sort of automation, some sort of AI insights, and then integrations across all of your systems. So the modern platforms like Dynamics 365, NetSuite, Sage are all shifting us towards proactive, insight-driven finance. Once we add in AI, these technologies are not just tools, they're reshaping the very nature of the CFO role and the finance function as a whole. So it's very exciting, I think, but it's something that the CFOs need to get on board because you can't stay in the Stone Ages with your tech stack any longer.
And Cindy, just with some of the businesses that are kind of moving from those disconnected systems to the pillars of modern finance tech, which really makes sense, is that usually driven by maybe new finance leadership coming into the organization and saying, "Whoa, we've got to fix this," or is it they're going on an acquisition spree or they've got investment? Is that usually what you see, or is there something else that kind of, I guess, compels them to start looking deeply into the pillars of modern finance tech? What do you think?
Yeah, James, it could be any of the three. I've seen it all, but what I have seen is if the CFO doesn't get on board, it's just usually a disaster. So you can't go, a new CFO cannot go in and think that we're going to run, that organization is going to run on all of these old systems,
Got
right?
you.
So, it is still shocking when we come into an account and find out that the company is still on a mainframe.
Yeah.
And so it does happen, believe me, but it's got to be a combination of all of those things, and a strong IT presence, right?
Yeah.
You definitely need to have a strong IT team behind the CFO.
Got you. Perfect. Okay.
AI is revolutionizing financial services, and some of the use cases here show this. So, with fraud detection and risk management, there are AI technologies, FICO AI, MasterCard AI, and the estimated business impact is 90% fraud detection. So, back in the day, it was very easy to perform fraud, to take
Mhm.
somebody else's identity. With the introduction of AI, it is not as easy as it used to be. Customer service and chatbots. We all know anytime you go on an app, anytime you go on a website, somebody pops up to say, what can I help you with? It's everywhere. But what it's done is it's cut down routine queries, 60 to 80% of what they can automate that chatbot will tell you, which also reduces 30% of the cost across that. Then credit scoring and loan underwriting. There's Zest AI, Experian AI. Back in the day, you used to go to get a loan. It used to take forever. People were, shuffling paperwork, trying to figure out, the loan underwriting. So now these systems are reducing that and making it more accurate profiles. And then in your personalized financial advisory tools like Wealthfront, Personetics, what that's helping is boost client engagement, and then it's helping the customer understand how to cross sell and upsell certain things. So you are seeing this all over the financial industry, that AI is pretty much taking over. And then as the time goes on, we're going to see it a lot in other industries as well.
Yeah. I I remember a couple of years ago that the customer service chatbots on websites, or if you call your bank, were difficult and frustrating to deal with. But I have to say that the advancement in those types of technology, particularly on the customer service
Yeah.
perspective, even like in our own tool, a lot of the support tickets that were raised would need to be into the support team, into a human. But now, similarly, the team or the users of our platform in particular have a chatbot and they can ask simple queries to get it. And obviously that helps us as a software business to scale with less people, but also it just gives better customer satisfaction. But yeah, you can really see the advancement of those tools in particular making big impacts, right?
Yeah, yeah, you really have. And then, I'm looking forward to the day where I don't need to talk to a human, because
Yeah,
sometimes the
fair
problem
enough.
is complex, and I think they're going to train, AI to be able to, yep, this chat understands everything you're saying, but you still
Yeah.
have those situations where you're like, customer service rep, I really need to talk to somebody.
Yeah, yeah, I'm with you. Very good. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So we've thought about this a lot, and there's a
Yeah.
path to enterprise AI. Um, you have to form a cohesive strategy. It's got to be operational execution along with governance oversight. So we've kind of designed where we think you should go. So you would start with strategizing. You would figure out your use cases. What are you exactly trying to do? What kind of ROI are you trying to achieve? Then you would go to establish governance. You need to create committees, figure out the impact assessment, figure out how to educate your stakeholders. Then you have to evaluate your use cases a little further to make sure you are going to get a return on investment. Then you'll go into design. So you will do your proof of concepts. You'll figure out how you're going to incorporate your data. Then you will build it, you will deploy it, you will monitor it, and then there might be the day where you have to decommission it. It's just like every advance in technology, It's going to get old after a few years. There's going to be new, bright, better things. So there might be a time, just like you decommission your ERP software, you might have to decommission your AI agents that you've built for something better.
Yeah, makes sense. It's really interesting because obviously, I put a pretty startling statistic up earlier on where, you know, over the last number of years, up to 80% of AI projects have been scrapped before, business value has been realized. And I think for anyone joining today, the organizations that don't think about this and have some sort of framework like the team at RSM have established, to be honest, that's probably where you're heading, right? Because a lot of stuff goes into, and a lot of steps and processes and committees, as you say, Cindy, go into making sure that we get the outcomes that we're trying to deliver. I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so what are you guys doing in the space?
Yeah, so we are doing what everybody else is doing, investing $1 billion. No, I mean we really are investing $1 billion. We have to stay in front of this. So um, what part of our strategy is we're upskilling, right? Everyone doesn't know AI. We didn't come from an age of AI. So we are having courses available on our learning center. We have an AI developer fellowship. We have an AI executive education program. And then we have prompt engineering, train the trainer. So we're making ourselves skilled AI consultants. Then we are enabling tools. I think we talked earlier about Microsoft 365 Copilot that's been
Yep.
launched for everybody in our organization. And then we're using other things like Content Explorer, AOD AI solutions, Data Snipper, Uplink, just different things that are helping our lives be easier. Then build and develop. So we're building Copilot agents, Copilot Studio solutions, AI flows, custom machine learning development. And then we are going with our strategic alliances of our partners, right? We're working with Workday, Dayshape, ServiceNow, Microsoft, Additive, BlueJay. And then finally, enablement and engagement. We're having office hours. We're showing new things constantly. Like this is what we're doing now. We have workshops. We have innovation challenges. We're doing things, for example, like we're using AI to respond to RFPs. Everyone knows that used to be a terrible manual process. We're using AI to write statements of work. So we're definitely using it in our day to day as well as developing and developing AI agents for our clients as well.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And Cindy, just on some of I can see a couple of questions come through. I'm just going to take one now. Like the types of organizations that work with RSM, is it, are you guys like industry focused, or is there like a size kind of revenue threshold in terms of like where you guys operate and size of businesses that you would typically deal with? Just one question
Yeah, I
for
would
the
say
attendees.
for sure, definitely mid-market.
Okay.
And we do focus on industry. We are industry specific, but we cover all of the industries. So, TMT, industrials, consumer products, life sciences, and we have tax and audit who are also, try to work in the industry silos so that we
Yeah,
can become experts in all of those industries.
makes sense. Great. Okay, thank you. The services, I guess, that you guys offer. Talk to us a little bit about this.
Yeah, so it's all starts with advisory services. So we're going to help organizations move beyond AI experimentation to produce measurable outcomes, but we have to start with advisory. So I think I talked a little bit about it before. It's use cases, AI governance, AI center of excellence, and technical workshops. Then we go into implementation, right, where we're actually developing and deploying these AI agents, and then managed services, very much like our software that we support, which is Microsoft D365, Sage, NetSuite, our ERP software. We also do Salesforce, other things like that. But
Okay.
we have a managed services offering would be the last step, right? So you're not, once we deploy AI agents and do all of this customization for you, we're not just going to leave you to figure the rest out if there are issues. We will be there to help you through the issues. So that's kind of how we see the, delivering these AI benefits aligned with business priorities.
Got you. So I guess it's the kind of customer success managed service element to make sure, back to what we were talking about earlier, that you're delivering those measurable outcomes and we're trying to hit those return on investments and that kind of thing, which obviously the customer cares about, right?
Exactly.
Makes sense. Okay, perfect.
And
Do
then,
you want to talk about this? Yeah.
yeah, it's fine. I don't know what happened to that slide, but we do have a use case here, or a kind of story of one of our clients that we help. So Kelowna, BC is one of the fastest growing cities in Canada.
Okay.
Leaders are using data, AI, and process automation to increase efficiency and better serve the city's residents. So RSM worked to develop IT strategy, data governance framework, AI, and automation infrastructure for them. We ended up building a building permit AI assistant using Copilot Studio and Azure Open AI services to facilitate the building permit process with a user-friendly chat-like experience. This reduced the length of the permitting process from months to days. So once we were able to launch this pilot, then they brought us back for more business and more things so the city can function a little more efficiently. So this is one
Okay.
of our use cases that is, a great win.
Fantastic. Okay. And I assume as you guys kind of continue to work with this, I guess, government, right? It's a government body effectively, right? The city of, I'm trying to figure, Kelowna?
Kelowna, British. Yeah, sorry. Kelowna, it's cut off. Kelowna, British Columbia.
Yeah, yeah, okay. I assume so as you go through that managed service element, you're working with different stakeholders to try and find other use cases that they may be thinking about. Is that kind of the process that you do moving forward?
Exactly, exactly. So we start with one, we make sure that's successful, and then we move on to the next use case because, it's not just RSM coming up with ideas, it's the customer as well saying, this was awesome. Now we want to do it with, this permit or that permit. So, it
Right.
kind of takes us working as a team to kind of see what their next objective is and then what we can do for them.
Makes sense. Very good. Okay. What can people do today then?
Well, I think take immediate action. You have to look through your tech stack. You have to look for gaps. You have to identify a quick win. Maybe it's just AP automation to take some time savings off of your AP team. And then you have to engage your stakeholders and the strategy first conversation, like where are you headed? I think those are three of the most important things you can do that won't take a lot of time. But the bottom line is digital transformation doesn't start with software. It starts with clarity. You have to pick one pain point, and solve it. Then you build momentum on top of that. And I think Kefron's going to show you how AI can take this even further. So back to you, James.
Folks, I guess what we wanted to do today, just to finish off, conscious some of you joining today's session may not be massively familiar with the Kefron solution. As I talked about at the start, look, the Kefron product is relatively simple, but what we're really seeing in terms of AI impacting finance teams is four key areas, right? And where we believe that it's going to have the biggest impact. One is efficiency and automation, okay, which is obviously very, very common in terms of use cases for AI. Two, and Cindy touched on it earlier in today's session, is around risk management, fraud, that type of thing. Decision making with massive, large data sets, depending on the size of your organization, because there's so much data in your ERP system, in your accounts payable function, in email threads. What we want to try and do is use AI to support analyzing that data on a large data set scale. And then there's also a little bit around a shift in skills. Okay, so if you are working in finance and you've got that kind of knot in your stomach about maybe I should be thinking a little bit more about using AI, I think that's important to start thinking about because using these tools that are readily available to you, whether it's a tool like we provide or an agent that the RSM team can support you with. Getting familiar with some of these key concepts is important. So look, I'm not going to spend loads of time on Kefron. I wanted to try and avoid a massive sales pitch, but ultimately the tool is designed very specifically for accounts payable and purchase to pay automation. And what the tool is trying to do for most organizations that we speak to is three main things. It's reduce the manual data entry on the front end of your process. So as invoices come in, instead of having your accounting team manually open those documents and start inputting the data, we want the tool to extract the data using AI. And that's everything from the header level information right down to the price, quantity, and bank details across the document. We then want to automate repetitive tasks. And I think in an AP or a purchase to pay process, people think about, raising a purchase order or automatically matching an invoice against a purchase order. And they are repetitive tasks. But every AP organization that I speak to, in 9 times out of 10, they'll talk about this categorization process. So an invoice comes in from company ABC and it's a stock supplier. So if I'm in a manual AP process, I'm taking that invoice and I'm putting it into a stock supplier invoice folder in my Outlook or my Gmail, right? And we're categorizing those documents. It really starts with that start of the process. And I think that's why Cindy was talking about really mapping out, understanding the tech stack gaps and understanding those processes end to end. So then you can work with an organization like Kefron or RSM to identify opportunities for automation. And then the final thing is just speeding up query resolution and provide some analytical reporting, which I'm going to come on to. Really quickly, if any of you today are thinking about potentially a quick win, I think most organizations, and probably why Cindy, referenced AP automation as a quick win, is because in most cases, your accounts payable process is going to be ripe for automation if there's no automation or AI introduced in the process already. And that's because it's typically repetitive tasks following similar workflows with slight nuances. So if you're thinking about this type of tool or any AP tool, ultimately what would happen is if you think about your elongated AP process and how it may, if you write it down on a whiteboard, squiggle all around, really what we want to try and do is centralize the process. So all that happens is the invoices come into your accounts payable mailbox. We'll set up an auto forward in your mailbox and all of the documents are going to route to the Kefron extraction engine. The Kefron extraction engine is then going to use OpenAI, and it's also going to use our own IP to extract the mandatory data off the documents. And I'm going to come on to the use case and the impact that that can have. It's then going to go through our verification checks. So the AI and the algorithms that we've got in the platform is going to check all of the common checks, right? So is it a duplicate? Does the supplier exist in the ERP system, whether that be NetSuite or Sage or Business Central? Do all of the calculations add up? Is all of the data visible on the screen? And then what it's going to go through is our matching process. So what the software is trained to do is extract the line data and compare that line data against your ERP's purchase order line information. So if you're a stock or an inventory business or a hospitality business, what we really want to do is reconcile every line on your invoice against every line on your PO. And if you think about it in a manual process, what most of your AP teams are probably doing is spending hours every single week going line by line to check off those individual line items. And then we're going to post that data into your accounting system or your ERP ready for payment. So that's ultimately what the system is trying to do. Just in terms of the use case and what it would look like, really what we try and do is make a tool that's as I guess user friendly and as intuitive as possible to use, right? So here's an indication of an image of the document on the left hand side of the screen, all of the line item information extracted, and then you've got your fraud prevention tools. So if it's missing a PO or it's a duplicate invoice number or the supplier is not set up, we want to stop that information. The key thing though is we're extracting the line level detail. Okay, so all of that line level detail that's on the invoice that you typically have to manually type in, the software is going to do that for you. Then what we're going to try and do if we think about efficiency and automation is highlight discrepancies. Okay, so obviously we're talking about automation and use cases for automation today. But if you think about maybe the 10, 20% that can't be automated, and there's no way they can be automated, this is the kind of use case or screen that your team will be interacting with. So in this scenario, we've got the invoice lines that have been extracted from the invoice on the left-hand side, and then you've got your order lines here on the right-hand side. And what you'll notice is the software has identified, hey, there's a discrepancy here. We've got it in amber, and we think it's in amber because we just think you should check it. And what it's identifying here is the unit price is $13, but what we've been invoiced at is $12.94. So we've been invoiced for less than we've ordered. So in most businesses, we're probably going to allow that to pass through, right? The unit price is less. What you won't allow to pass through, though, is we've ordered at a unit price of $100 and we've been invoiced at a unit price of $113.96. That's going to stop, present to the AP user, and then they're going to communicate using the tools back and forth with the vendor to resolve that query or discrepancy. So again, if we think about that efficiency and automation, there are some of the tools that we'd be using and solutions we'd be deploying to make that as simple as possible. Just some use cases in terms of efficiency and automation, and some organizations that we would work with. Different kind of size organizations in terms of their volume. So if you think about Gills Point S, so a tire dealership right across the United States, 150 locations, they receive on average about 12,000 documents each month. The software is extracting 134,000 fields from each document, or sorry, from all of those documents. And the extraction accuracy is about 93%. Okay, Smith Cameron Group, a Canadian organization just outside of Ontario, 986 invoices received each month. The software is extracting 12,000 fields each month, so 10 or 12 fields from each document. And then it's the extraction accuracy is the 96.73%. Now, why am I showing you that? Well, if we think about an efficiency and automation use case, if we do the math on this, and I'm conscious there's lots of CFOs and accountants on the call, so you can sense check the math. But if we take the top use case, you receive 12,000 documents on average on any given month, and your accounts payable team are just spending 2 minutes on average inputting that data. Okay, that translates to 58 days on manual data entry. Okay, if you've got 8 full-time employees within that team, so 8 full-time accounting or accounts payable specialists, each FTE is spending 7 working days just on manual data entry. Okay, if we apply the saving then, so the extraction accuracy using the AI, it's 6.5 days per FTE per month. Okay, so that's really what we're trying to get to when we're mapping out your processes and when Cindy and I are talking about understanding some of the opportunities for automation. It's as simple as just manually inputting data into your accounting system. In terms of risk management and automation, what you can see on screen here is the software is basically going to give you information that dictates how many invoices have passed through the platform and been verified automatically. And verification is basically just checking, do the bank details verify against our accounting system and what we've seen on the invoice, yes or no? Is it a duplicate? And if it's a duplicate, stop it and present it to a user because again, it could be fraudulent. Or there's a number of different fraud checks that can be introduced. Okay, so from a risk management and automation perspective, you can see that 70% of Gills documents are passing through the verification checks and into the matching stage. Their match rate right now is 53%. We want to try and get that to 70. Okay, so 7 out of 10 invoices processed without human intervention. And then a different use case here, verification, 92% have been processed using AI and checking all those business rules. And we can see the match rate here is 84%. Okay, so it just gives you an insight into some of the use cases. I can see a question pop through and I'm conscious of time, so I'm just going to answer it immediately. There's a question here about match rates. Okay, so why is the match rate 53% for one client and 84% for the other? Which is a really common question that we will get when we present these statistics. So really quickly, the reason for that is a number of reasons. The first one is the quality of documents that we receive. Okay, so if you think about a tire dealership, at the end of every day, the stores are uploading their paper invoices to the software, right? And the software is extracting it. Obviously, because paper invoices could be crumpled up, there's coffee spilled on them. It's difficult for humans to read them. It's probably going to be difficult for the software, all right? And then also, if you think about your receipting process, so an invoice, a purchase order, and your receipt note, if everything matches, we're going to post it. If we don't have a relevant receipt note ready for matching, that doesn't go towards our matching statistic. Okay, so when we do have that receipt, you probably will see those numbers shoot up. So hopefully that answers your question. Ken, I think, asked that, so thank you for that. we're nearly finished. Just in terms of data-driven opportunities, one of the things that I guess purchase to pay teams, accounts payable, accounting teams, finance departments want to understand is what's our match rate going to be, James? So when we invest in this tool and you come back to us in 3 months and we decide, have we met our return on investment criteria? What could that look like? And what this tool is trying to give you in a dashboard view is what your match rate is. So how many invoices have been processed without human intervention. But then it's going to give you some insights into how can we make better informed decisions. So as an example, our top 10 suppliers with the highest automation rates, what our customers typically do is go to these suppliers to try and negotiate early payment discounts. Because they have the highest automation rates, what that usually means is we're paying them on time and maybe paying them ahead of time. Let's try and negotiate those early payment discounts. Then we can see suppliers that are causing the most intervention in the matching process. Okay, so these are good candidates to try and target. So we go from 67% in this instance right up to 70, 80% if we tackle the challenges associated with these 4 or 5 suppliers. Okay, so hopefully that gives some insights into maybe using the tool for some data-driven opportunities. And then here's just some feedback from some clients in terms of, we ask every single organization, if we could give you 1 day a week back, right, in terms of your finance department, what would you do at that time? And you can see um, different kind of use cases, right? So for example, for big brand tire, finance is supposed to be a strategic business partner. We're going from 250 to 1,000 locations, and my core finance teams need to be able to support onboarding those locations. Other departments wants to be able to focus or redeploy staff into other areas. And of course, what we're trying to do is help those finance leaders redeploy those staff. So folks, I think that brings us to the end of today's session. I appreciate we're a little bit over time. Cindy, I want to thank you for joining.
You're welcome.
Really, really appreciate having a special guest from RSM, and we've done some events together across the United
Yes.
States, and hopefully we'll do more in the future. Left mine and Cindy's emails directly on there. So if you wanted to reach out to us individually, please do.